do what it takes to get there, I want you to repeat the words. I love myself. I love who I am.
Florence Griffith Joyner was the fastest woman who ever lived. Her records from 1988 still haven't been broken. But on September 21st, 1998, her husband found her cold and lifeless at just 38 years old. The autopsy revealed something nobody expected. Not drugs, not what the rumors said, but a hidden condition she'd carried since birth. What happened after her death was even more shocking. Her own family turned on each other in ways that would have broken her heart. Florence Griffith Joyner was born into extreme poverty in the Watts Projects. It was December 21st, 1959, and she was the 7th of 11 children in a neighborhood that never made life easy. Her parents split up when she was just 4. Money was always tight. The family had little, and they lived surrounded by crime and struggle. But even as a kid, Florence had something inside her. That harsh world never broke her. It made her tougher. People called her DD, and they laughed at her when she talked about what she wanted. She had big dreams. She told them she'd be a designer, an artist, a poet. They thought that was a joke. Every time she spoke up, someone told her to be more realistic. The teasing was constant, and it dug deep. It made her hide her dreams for years. But that fire never left. Every insult pushed her to work harder, even if they couldn't see it. Her father, Robert, didn't want his kids sounding like everyone else. He told them to speak properly, not like they were from Watts. It was his way of protecting them, making sure nobody thought less of them. But outside their door, it did the opposite. Kids would taunt Florence for acting different. Even back home, she never quite fit in. That left her feeling trapped between two worlds, at home and in the neighborhood, but it also gave her a sense of discipline. It shaped who she became. Running was the first thing that felt easy. By 7 years old, Florence was already racing and winning. Her speed was real, and people noticed. But money was tight, so at 19, she stopped training. The bills had to be paid, and she went to work as a bank teller. It was a hard choice. Her talent was clear, but keeping her family afloat mattered more. Then one day, Coach Bob Kersey walked into that bank. He had trained some of the best runners in the world. When he recognized Florence, he offered her a way back into the sport. Thanks to him, she went to UCLA and started training seriously again. That chance changed everything. It put her on the path toward becoming the fastest woman in history. Still, it wasn't an easy road. Even as a college athlete at Cal State Northridge, she struggled with the most basic part of sprinting, her start. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't seem to master those first few steps off the blocks. It frustrated her. Some coaches doubted she'd ever make it as a top sprinter. Florence would cry after practice, wondering if she was chasing a dream that didn't fit her. But she kept going. By 1980, she had earned a place at the U.S. Olympic trials, running against future champions like Alice Brown and Jeanette Bolden. She was so close to making the team. Then politics shattered that dream. The U.S. decided to boycott the Moscow Olympics after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Florence was crushed. No matter how fast she had run, she would never get the chance to compete. It was one of the hardest losses she ever faced. When money ran out after her first year at Northridge, she left school. She went back to the bank. For months, that was her life. It felt like the sport was slipping away. Then Bob Kersey stepped in again. He fought to get her financial aid, and Florence went to UCLA. The move paid off. She switched her focus to the 200 meters, where she could make up for her slower starts. She trained late into the night. Every setback became fuel. Every mile mattered. That work finally showed in 1982. She won the NCAA 200-meter title. Then she won the 400 meters in 1983, but she was still unsure. The pressure stayed with her. Even when she stood on the podium with a silver medal at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, it felt like a loss. Coming in second left her hollow. Some athletes would have been satisfied. Florence wasn't. She left the sport for a while after those games, working at a bank again, feeling the weight of what she had missed. That could have been the end. But the fire inside her wouldn't go out. It was 7 p.m. at the 1980 U.S. Olympic trials in Eugene, Oregon, when Florence Griffith Joyner first crossed paths with Al Joyner. Florence was a graceful UCLA sprinter, and Al was a 20-year-old up-and-coming track star. When he saw her at the sign-in table, he thought she was a trainer at first. They exchanged names quickly, too shy to say much more. The next day, Al watched Florence warm up for the 100 meters and couldn't stop staring. Curious and smitten, he asked his sister, Jackie Joyner, who would one day be one of the greatest heptathletes, if Florence was seeing anyone. Jackie teased him, telling telling him she probably wouldn't be interested. Al kept his distance after that, but their story wasn't over. It took 6 years before they finally started dating in 1986, after both had risen to the top of their sport. That wait set the stage for one of track and field's most famous couples. When they decided to marry, the plan was to have a traditional wedding after the 1988 Olympics, but a powerful earthquake in Los Angeles changed all that. On October 1st, 1987, a 5.9 quake shook the city and scared Florence deeply. It made her realize life was short. Instead of waiting, she convinced Al they had to marry right away. Just 9 days later, on October 10th, 1987, they slipped off to Las Vegas and wed at the Wedding Gardens. Florence wore a dress she'd once used as a Halloween costume. The number 7 had special meaning for them. Al had proposed at 7 p.m. on July 17th, 1987, so it felt perfect. That spontaneous wedding was the start of a close bond. The song All My Life by Casey and JoJo would later play at Florence's funeral in 1998, a heartbreaking reminder of their deep love. After the wedding, Al became more than Florence's husband. He became her coach and greatest supporter. Florence had trained under Bob Kersee before, but she felt boxed in by his style. Kersee pushed her to copy others. Al encouraged Florence to believe in her own talents. For the first time, someone gave her financial support too, so she could train without juggling odd jobs. That trust and freedom lit a fire in Florence. Al helped her focus, and her training results skyrocketed. People began calling them the royal family of track, and Florence began to prepare for what would be the most incredible performances of her career. Al changed everything about her workouts. Instead of copying other runners, Florence built serious strength. She started lifting heavy, up to 320 pounds in squats and lunges, something most female sprinters never did then. She studied how top male sprinters like Ben Johnson and Carl Lewis exploded off the blocks. Every part of her training became about raw power and speed. She also crushed core workouts, sometimes doing 1,000 sit-ups a day. Florence's body became strong and muscular, and her races began to look different too. Every stride was sharper. Every start was faster. It was a whole new way to train. The proof showed up in 1987. Florence ran a personal best of 10.96 seconds in the 100 meters and 21.96 in the 200. These times were among the world's best, and they earned her a silver medal in the 200 meters at the World Championships in Rome. That was the moment she knew she could do more. What came next stunned everyone. On July 16, 1988, Florence Griffith Joyner shocked everyone. She ran the 100 meters at the U.S. Olympic trials in Indianapolis in an unbelievable 10.49 seconds. That was 0.27 seconds faster than the old world record of 10.79, which belonged to Evelyn Ashford. In sprinting, most records improve by hundredths of a second, not tenths. Some thought the timing equipment had failed. Even the officials had their doubts. The wind gauge showed 0, so there was no wind helping her. Her time was faster than men's national records in countries like Ireland and Norway. Over the 2-day trials, she ran the 3 fastest times ever for a woman: 10:49 in the quarterfinal, 10:70 in the semifinal, and 10:61 in the final. 36 years later, nobody has come close. Elaine Thompson-Herah ran 10:54 in 2021, still 0.05 slower. FloJo's record remains one of the most incredible and controversial achievements in sport. If Florence Griffith Joyner's 100 millimeters in Seoul was astonishing, her 200 millimeters was even more unreal. In the semifinal, she smashed the world record with a time of 21.56 seconds. Less than 2 hours later, she did it again. In the final, she ran an unbelievable 21.34 seconds. No other woman has come within 0.2 of a second of that mark in nearly 40 years. On that day, she was in a league of her own. Her second 100 millimeters in the final was estimated at 10.16 seconds, faster than the existing 100 millimeters world record at the time. It was a perfect mix of raw power and smooth form. Even the closest challenger, Jamaica's Grace Jackson, ran her personal best and still lost by 0.22 seconds. That was nearly 5 meters back. The date was 29th of September 1988. That record still stands. At those Olympics, FloJo didn't just dominate one race. She took home 3 golds in the 100 meter, the 200 meters, and the 400 meters relay. She also added a silver medal in the 400 meters relay. No female track athlete had ever won that many medals at a single Olympics before. In the 400 meters relay, she ran the 3rd leg and handed over a big lead to Evelyn Ashford. Then, just 40 minutes later, she ran the 400 meter anchor leg in 48.10 seconds, the fastest of anyone won in the race. That was enough to help the United States finish second, behind the Soviet Union. Her 4 medals in Seoul took her career Olympic total to 5, including the silver she won in the 200 meters at Los Angeles in 1984. It made her a global star. She was honored with the Sullivan Award and elected into the USA Track and Field Hall of Fame. But the sudden improvement in her times created suspicion. Some athletes couldn't believe what they were seeing. Joaquim Cruz and Ben Johnson, himself caught up in a doping scandal, were among the loudest critics. FloJo was 28 years old and had improved her 100-meter personal best by more than half a second in one season. That kind of jump was unheard of. Even her sister-in-law, Jackie Joyner Kersey, called the accusations the lowest point of her own career. The media kept pushing, and the stories grew wilder. Daryl Robinson, a former athlete, even claimed she had bought growth hormone from him. She called him a liar and denied ever taking drugs. Still, the questions followed her into retirement and after her death. What is often overlooked is how thoroughly she was tested. In Seoul, she was tested more than most. The head of the IOC's medical commission, Prince Alexandre de Merode, ordered extra tests because of the rumors. Manfred Donica, a top anti-doping expert, personally handled her samples. They found nothing. De Merode was clear. Every test was negative. Sebastian Coe, an Olympic champion himself, later pointed out that people can make progress that surprises everyone. Breaking a record doesn't mean cheating. Without a positive test, there was no proof at all. FloJo shocked the world in February 1989. At just 29 years old, only a few months after making history at the 1988 Seoul Olympics, she announced she was retiring from track and field. Fans and experts couldn't believe it. After all, she had just won 3 Olympic gold medals in the 100 meters, 200 meters, and the 400 meters relay, and a silver in the 400 meters relay. She had also shattered the world records in the 100 meters with a time of 10.49 seconds, and in the 200 meters with 21.34 seconds. Even today, more than 35 years later, those records still stand. Her sudden decision left people wondering. She explained that it was because new business opportunities had come her way, and that training at the level she was used to would be impossible with all these distractions. Right after Seoul, she was flooded with endorsement deals, including big names in Japan, her own signature doll, and even her own sportswear line. Companies were offering her millions, but there was also the matter of timing. Her retirement came right before stricter anti-doping tests were introduced by the sport's governing body, the International Association of Athletics Federations. Later that same year, FloJo's incredible improvements in speed and her muscular look had already caused some to whisper about performance-enhancing drugs, even though she never failed a drug test. Stepping away just before random out-of-competition testing began led some to wonder if avoiding scrutiny was part of the plan. Her husband, Al Joyner, defended her fiercely, insisting she had been tested more than most athletes and telling reporters they could test her every day if they wanted, but the questions never entirely disappeared. Meanwhile, FloJo kept moving forward. After retiring, she built a new career off the track. In 1989, she designed the Indiana Pacers uniforms for the 1989-90 NBA season, putting her bold style into their new look. Major companies like Mizuno, Agfa, Proxy Shoes, and LJN Toys paid her handsomely to put her face or name on their products. A FloJo doll was created to rival Barbie at a time when the doll market was booming. She also wrote children's books, romance novels, and appeared on popular TV shows like 227 and Santa Barbara. In the year after Seoul, she was earning close to $4 million. Her impact didn't stop with business. From 1993 to 1998, she served as co-chair of the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports under President Bill Clinton. In that role, she traveled across the United States to encourage fitness and a healthy lifestyle. On top of that, she set up a foundation to help underprivileged children. In 1990, Florence Griffith Joyner had her first documented seizure. It happened 2 years after her famous Olympic wins in Seoul. Suddenly, she lost consciousness. Her muscles contracted violently. When she woke up, she was exhausted and confused. She was only 30 years old. To most people, she was a picture of perfect health. Nobody outside her close circle knew this had happened. On the surface, she was still the world's fastest woman, but privately, this was the first sign of a serious medical issue that nobody fully understood. By 1993 and 1994, more seizures followed. Florence had to get treatment again and again. Doctors gave her anti-epileptic medication and kept a close watch. These were not small scares. They happened happened often enough that she and her family kept them secret. Despite all this, she kept going. She made public appearances. She focused on her work and her family. People saw her smile and style, not knowing what was going on. Still, her health was getting worse. Behind the scenes, a silent fight was going on. That fight became very real on April 4th, 1996. Florence was on a flight from Los Angeles to St. Louis with her husband Al and their 5-year-old daughter Mary. Mid-flight, she had a serious seizure. The crew and her family acted fast. When the plane landed, she was rushed to Barnes Jewish Hospital in St. Louis. Doctors checked her and let her go home the next day. The family kept the whole incident quiet. No one outside them knew how scared they had been. This emergency happened under stressful conditions, high in the air, which can make a seizure worse. Her family decided to protect her privacy at all costs. Even so, this flight was an important turning point. It was just 2 years before she passed away. When she died in 1998, doctors finally discovered the cause. Florence had a cavernous angioma. This is a rare brain problem where tiny clusters of blood vessels don't form right. They can leak or bleed. That can lead to seizures and even sudden death. The small lump was in the left frontal part of her brain. That part controls movement and thoughts. Doctors explained that cavernous angiomas often hide without symptoms. Only 10 to 15% of people with one ever have serious issues. Hers went undetected, despite all the hospital visits. Many people once thought her seizures were tied to drugs or her training, but that wasn't true. The abnormality was congenital. She was born with it. Knowing this answered many questions. It also showed that even someone so strong and successful could have a hidden and deadly condition. Through all these struggles, Florence was a devoted mother. Her daughter, Mary Ruth, was born on November 15, 1990. Florence had decided to leave sports before Mary was born. She put her energy into being a hands-on parent. She read to Mary every day. By the time Mary was 2, she could already read some words. Florence even encouraged Mary to speak 4 languages by age 4. She created leotards for her daughter and supported her gymnastics and singing. The evening before Florence Griffith Joyner's death felt perfect. Flo-Jo and her husband, Al Joyner, were in Santa Barbara, California. They weren't just there to relax. They were also making plans to renew their wedding vows for their 11th anniversary. Al was a 1984 Olympic gold medalist in the triple jump. Flo-Jo was the fastest woman alive. Even in her quiet moments, the world records she set in 1988, 10:49 for the 100 meters and 21.34 for the 200 meters, still felt unreal. That night was full of excitement for what was to come. It was strange to think that this would also be her last. That same evening, Flo-Jo followed her usual bedtime routine with her daughter, Mary. Mary was 7 years old. Even though Florence was a star, what mattered most to her was being a mom. She loved tucking her daughter into bed every night. That ritual was simple but real. The two of them would often doze off together. That last bedtime was peaceful. Florence fell asleep next to Mary, and neither of them could know it would be the last time. Late that night, Al came home and made a choice that would haunt him forever. Florence and Mary were already asleep upstairs. Not wanting to wake them, Al decided to stay downstairs. He grabbed some ice cream and ended up falling asleep on the couch. It was a tiny, kind gesture that would matter more than he ever expected. By 6:30 a.m. on September 21st, 1998, the morning was already tragic. Al went upstairs and found Florence cold and unresponsive. Mary was still asleep, one small leg draped across her mother. It was a heartbreaking image that no one can forget. The world's fastest woman lying still next to the daughter who loved her most. Al grabbed the phone and called 911. Paramedics rushed in, but it was too late. Flo-Jo was gone at 38 years old. The cause of death was suffocation during a severe epileptic seizure. An undiagnosed brain condition called cavernous angioma triggered the seizure. It was a rare condition Florence had carried all her life without knowing. That morning, news of her passing spread around the world. Fans were stunned. Everyone thought of her as unstoppable, but even the most extraordinary people can have hidden dangers they never see. Her autopsy told a sad and honest story. It showed that while asleep, she had a seizure and ended up face down. Her pillows and blankets blocked her airway. A coroner named Richard Fukumoto explained it simply. She suffocated. Nothing more. No drugs. No secret cause. That was the most surprising part. Despite years of rumors, there were no banned substances in her body. The tests only showed tiny amounts of acetaminophen and diphenhydramine, everyday over-the-counter medicine. For so long, people had doubted her. They thought her speed must have come from steroids or other performance enhancers. But her records were real, and her talent was her own. There were some unusual findings, an enlarged heart, and other signs that can happen to athletes or those under extreme stress. Some argued this could point to drug use, but the coroner was clear. There was no proof. The brain condition that caused her seizure had nothing to do with sport. It was just bad luck. The final report ended years of suspicion. Even Primo Nebbiolo of the IAF hoped this would help her truly rest in peace. The media had chased FloJo for years, always questioning her greatness. Now they had an answer. Al Joyner felt lost when his wife Florence Griffith Joyner died so suddenly. She was only 38 when she passed away in September 1998. 5 months later, Al said it felt like he was no longer living one day at a time. Instead, every second felt long and empty. Every day, he would talk to her as if she were still there. To him, Florence wasn't just his wife. She was his best friend, his coach, his partner, and the mother of their child. The pain ran so deep that Al would walk around their house, looking at Florence's picture in every room. He would speak to those pictures, telling her all about his thoughts and troubles. Even when his voice cracked with sadness, he kept going. The whole world had known her as the dazzling FloJo, but to him, she was just the gentle, kind woman he had chased for 7 years before she finally gave him her heart. Al was haunted by guilt too. He wondered if he could have saved her, if he had been sleeping upstairs the night she died. Even as he felt her spirit still near him, he couldn't make sense of his life without her. Then, just a year after Florence passed away, things took a terrible turn. Florence's mother, Florence Griffith Sr., filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Al in September 1999. The 4-page complaint claimed that Al had failed to care for Florence properly. It even accused him of harmful or offensive touching, though there was no proof. The coroner had already determined that Florence had died of suffocation after an epileptic seizure. That lawsuit wasn't just about grief, it was also about control. Florence's mother was angry over the management of Florence's charitable foundations. The legal fight asked for both money and punitive damages. It shocked many who had once admired the close bond between Florence and Al. That wasn't the only fight. Florence's death had sparked even more legal battles inside the family. Al wanted his mother-in-law to leave the Rancho Santa Margarita condo that he owned, where she had lived for 8 years. Florence's mother fought back, saying that her daughter had promised she could stay there forever. Florence Sr. told the court that FloJo had once assured her, "Mama, this is your house now. You don't ever have to worry about anything." Al denied that this had ever happened. He explained that his plan was only to make sure that their daughter, Mary Ruth, would have a stable future. Money troubles only made things worse. Al was also facing serious debt. Public records showed he owed more than $40,000 to one bank and more than $12,000 in funeral bills. The courtroom struggles and public accusations broke the hearts of friends and fans. The family was also torn apart over Florence's legacy. Al had created the FloJo Memorial Community Empowerment Foundation to honor his wife's memory. But Florence's mother and sister already had the Florence Griffith Joyner Youth Foundation, which had been running for 5 years. Both charities wanted to support young athletes and underprivileged kids. This led to more fighting. Accusations flew back and forth that one side was undermining the other. Donors didn't know who to trust. Instead of celebrating Florence's life, it became one more painful sign of a family divided by loss. And then there was the most heartbreaking issue of all. Florence died without a will. Even though she had prepared one in California, nobody could find it after she passed. That meant Florence died intestate, with no legal instructions for her estate, which was worth about $3 million. That triggered a long fight between Al and Florence's mother over everything she left behind. Houses, money, investments, even rights to her image. The arguments were so bitter that a judge had to put a third party in charge of the estate because neither side could agree. Years passed, and the money was eaten up by legal fees. Finally, in 2003, nearly 5 years after Florence's death, the court decided how to split the estate between Al and Florence's mother. But by then, most of its value was gone.